Here are the top stories for today, August 12, 2021. All accounted for, the Health Department shrugs off corruption allegations following the Commission on Audit's findings of deficiencies in its handling of COVID-19 funds worth over 67 billion pesos. Jabs, jabs, and more jabs. The country gets 100,000 doses of Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United Arab Emirates. Some 800,000 government-procured Pfizer jabs also arrive and will be deployed to areas with high COVID-19 cases. A magnitude 7.1 earthquake jolts the province of Davao Oriental. No casualty or major damage has so far been reported from the tremor. And more areas halt voter registration activities after these were placed under a stricter quarantine status. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The funds allocated to the Department of Health are all accounted for. This is the clarification of the Department of Health after the Commission on Audit or COA flagged the department for various deficiencies amounting to 67.3 billion pesos. In its 2020 audit report, COA says the deficiencies are due to non-compliance with pertinent laws and regulations. It also said there are also billions of pesos that are not yet obligated or disbursed, which is counter-beneficial to the department's continuing efforts in controlling the spread of COVID-19. In a statement, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III stressed that all funds are all accounted for. He said the money was used to procure test kits, personal protective equipment or PPE, payment of healthcare workers' benefits, salaries of personnel, among others. He further explained that of the 79.7 billion pesos COVID-19 funds received by the agency based on COA reports, 68.9 billion pesos were already utilized. He also said that the unobligated funds for this year were also used with the enactment of RA number 11519, extending the availability of appropriations under Bayanihan 2. For its part, Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara said the DOH has the chance to rebut the COA report, but in case of the failure to render an acceptable explanation, the Task Force Against Corruption may step in for an anti-graft investigation. Those who will be getting their financial aid or ayuda will be allowed to go out even if they do not have their quarantine passes. PNP Chief General Guillermo Eleazar said they will be lenient on this matter so that claimants can proceed to the distribution centers, get their cash aid, and buy essential goods. Eleazar said the PNP will focus on the orderly distribution of cash assistance to avoid super spreader events for COVID-19. So far, the Ayuda's payout day 1 went off smoothly. Interior Secretary Eduardo Año said the distributions were orderly and health protocols were strictly observed. Año said he expects the same to happen in the coming days. The DILG earlier assured that there will be no delay in the distribution of cash aid from the national government. More local government units came up with measures to effectively and safely send the money to the people as Ayuda distribution in Metro Manila continues. The details from Chris Mundo.
In Quezon City, a scheduling system is being implemented for the financial aid payout in the city's distribution centers. Qualified recipients of cash aid are advised to refer to the posted list of beneficiaries on its official social media pages or get in touch with their barangay. In Caloocan City, residents are advised to wait for their confirmatory text before going to distribution centers. The local government targets to distribute the cash aid to 40,000 families in a day. In Makati City, the local government partnered with mobile banking app for the distribution of financial aid. It says going online is the more convenient and safe way of sending money. Meanwhile, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso thanked President Duterte as the distribution of cash aid in Manila pushes through. A total of 380,280 families are expected to benefit from financial aid. The distribution is being carried out by the city government through the Manila Department of Social Welfare with the help of village officials in barangay halls and schools. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismundo.
The newly delivered Sinopharm vaccines will be distributed to areas experiencing a surge of COVID-19 cases. Assistant Secretary and Head of the National Task Force Against COVID-19 Subtask Group, Wilben Mayor, said the initial delivery of 100,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines will be a huge aid to the country's vaccination program. The shipment of Sinopharm COVID-19 jabs donated by the United Arab Emirates or UAE arrived at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport Wednesday afternoon. Various research works and clinical tests in UAE suggested that the locally produced version of the Sinopharm vaccine called HayatVax is 86% effective in preventing infection. The Food and Drug Administration of the Philippines, or FDA, has already granted the Emergency Use Authorization, or EUA, for Sinopharm vaccines. The bulk of government-procured Pfizer vaccines that arrived Wednesday night is also intended for distribution to areas with high COVID-19 cases. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez Jr. welcomed the arrival of the 813,150 doses of Pfizer jabs to the country. The delivery is said to be the biggest shipment of Pfizer vaccine so far in the country. Galvez said the jabs will be distributed to the surge areas, especially to the highly urbanized centers, including the NCR. He also thanked the United States government for the supply of the vaccines. U.S. Embassy Charge d'Affaires John Law, who was present during the vaccine arrival, said the United States will continue to support the country by providing more vaccines. The country's vaccine experts panel and the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, or NITAG, are currently studying the possible mixing of Sputnik V and AstraZeneca vaccines. This after Sputnik V's manufacturer, Gamaleya Research Institute, said there might be some delays in their deliveries because of logistics issues. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said the recommendation of the vaccine experts to mix two different jabs with the same vaccine technology platform is safety-wise and applicable in vaccines with the same technology, such as Pfizer and Moderna, which are all mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. In the case of AstraZeneca and Sputnik V, Duque said both vaccines are using an adenovirus vaccine vector. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez Jr. said the National Vaccination Operations Center, headed by DOH Undersecretary Mirna Cabotaje, will make a memorandum advisory tackling the guidelines on vaccine mix-and-match strategies. Still to come, an off-site modular hospital at the Lung Center of the Philippines will cater to COVID-19 patients. And 3 DFA chartered flights bring home over 1,000 Pinoys. Details ahead. Keep it here on the PNA Newsroom. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
You are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective.
I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic, because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work. A magnitude 7.1 quake jolted Davao Oriental this morning. The quake struck 95 kilometers southeast of the municipality of Governor Generoso at 1:46 a.m. and had a depth of 39 kilometers. The earthquake was felt in other parts of Mindanao and some areas in the Visayas. Mati City Information Officer Ben Jason Tesiorna said no untoward incident was reported from all 26 barangays. He said barangay personnel, especially around the coastal barangays, are continuously monitoring their respective area of responsibility for any possible damages to structures or sudden rise of the seawater level. The Department of Transportation, or DOT, also said there are no reported damages to Philippine Coast Guard installations, all personnel accounted for, and no personnel casualty and property damage. The national government has turned over 5 units of an off-site modular hospital to the Lung Center of the Philippines on Wednesday to be used for moderate to severe COVID-19 patients. The 120 million peso off-site modular hospital is expected to alleviate the need for more COVID-19 beds, with cases increasing due to the highly transmissible Delta variant. The modern facility has a 108-bed capacity inside the LCP compound in Quezon City. One of the 5 clusters will be used as an intensive care unit ward, while each of the remaining 4 clusters has 22 individual rooms with complete equipment as well. LCP spokesperson Dr. Norberto Francisco said they will try their best to open the modular hospital to accommodate patients as soon as possible. DPWH Secretary Mark Villar said they are all set to open more modular hospitals across the country to help address the need for more beds for COVID-19 patients. The local governments of Cebu and Cebu City continue to work on preventing the continued spike in COVID-19 cases, as residents are reminded to follow quarantine protocols. More on this from Joyce Cudis.
Following a surge in COVID-19 cases in Cebu Province, Presidential Communications Operations Office Secretary Martin Andunar urged Cebuanos to strictly comply with minimum public health standards to prevent the further spread of infection. Cebu Province on Tuesday reported 280 new cases, bringing the total number of active cases to 4,487, the highest number reported since the pandemic started in 2020. Last week, Cebu Province and the cities of Cebu, Mandaue, and Lapu-Lapu were placed under Alert Level 4, along with 33 other LGUs. Andunar reminded Cebuanos that being under COVID-19 Alert Level 4 indicates that serious action must be done. He also encouraged the public to monitor updates concerning heightened quarantine restrictions implemented by the government. Meanwhile, the Cebu City government will tighten border control and intensify checkpoints to minimize the movement of people amid the rising COVID-19 cases and presence of the Delta variant. Acting Mayor Michael Rama on Wednesday said the city will also be stricter on the policy regarding private vehicles roaming the streets with no essential purpose. He warned those who go out of their homes without a valid reason, as well as the owners of non-essential establishments who continue to receive patrons. For her part, Cebu Governor Gwendolyn Garcia ordered the police to strictly enforce transportation protocols, particularly the no overloading and no air conditioning rules for public utility vehicles. Garcia directed the police to flag down and apprehend airing buses that do not follow the protocols. PUVs, particularly buses, are mandated to avoid overloading and are only allowed to have a 75% seating capacity. Effective last August 6, all buses and minibuses plying around southern and northern Cebu are required to pass through Cebu South Bus Terminal and Cebu North Bus Terminal. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Joyce Cudis.
Registered dentists and licensed medical technologists may soon be allowed to serve as vaccinators against COVID-19. As a measure proposing this hurdled the committee level at the House of Representatives. The House Committee on Health approved House Bill 9354, which seeks to add dentists and medical technologists as vaccinators to help in the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines in the country. Committee Chair Angelina Tan, who is also author of the bill, said the proposal only provides qualifications and guidelines for those who intend to volunteer as vaccinators. Tan said the addition of dentists and medical technologists as vaccinators will contribute to the expansion of the vaccination program. Meanwhile, Albay Representative Joey Salceda filed a measure exempting medical supplies and devices against COVID-19 from taxes. House Bill 9958, or the COVID-19 Supplies Tax Exemption Act, was Salceda's response to President Rodrigo Duterte's request to Congress to provide tax relief to manufacturers of medical-grade oxygen. Under the said bill, the Secretary of Finance and the Secretary of Health shall jointly and periodically issue a list of critical or needed supplies for the prevention, control, and treatment of COVID-19. Salceda noted that the effectivity of the proposed law is until December 2022, the target period to achieve herd immunity. The bill will also allow the procurement of syringes and other COVID-19 needs tax-free. 3 chartered flights funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs brought home over 1,000 Filipinos to Davao, Cebu, and Manila on Wednesday. Nearly 400 repatriates from Oman arrived in Davao City and were followed by over 300 on board a Philippine Airlines flight from the United Arab Emirates. The third and final chartered flight arrived in Cebu City from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, carrying 350 passengers. The latest arrivals bring to 19 the total number of DFA chartered repatriation flights since June 2021. Another 10 repatriation flights are scheduled for this month, but additional flights will be mounted in the succeeding months. The Department of Foreign Affairs said the Philippine embassies and consulates around the world remain fully committed to bringing distressed Filipinos back to the Philippines amid the ongoing health crisis. Up next, no voter registration for now in some areas due to a stricter quarantine status. And a second chance at life, a former rebel says there is no more reason to continue the armed struggle against the government. We're back after a quick break. Stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. The Presidential Communications Operations Office highlighted the importance to report to the Filipino people the country's improvement under the leadership of President Rodrigo Duterte. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar said this will serve as a challenge for succeeding administrations either to continue or surpass Duterte's legacy of good governance. Andanar announced the launch of the Duterte Legacy, a communications campaign of the government to remind the Filipino people of Duterte's legacy in his 6 years in office. The Duterte Legacy campaign highlights the administration's achievements in peace and order, infrastructure and development, and poverty alleviation, as well as the government's COVID-19 response. It also aims to give Filipinos a measure to which they can compare who deserves to be the next president in 2022. Andanar also said that PCOO will push through with its Duterte Caravan nationwide, alongside the visit of Duterte to personally extend his gratitude to Filipinos who have supported him. The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, is gearing up for the 2022 elections despite the continuing COVID-19 pandemic, starting with plans to reactivate voters via online process, the enhanced community quarantine. More on this from Marita Moahe.
The over 6 million registered voters who have been deactivated may no longer need to personally visit the local COMELEC office to apply for reactivation soon. COMELEC Commissioner Rowena Guanzon said some 6.3 million voters were deactivated, but their biometrics are still in the database of the Commission on Elections. Guanzon said the online reactivation of voter registration will be made available this August. Deactivated voters are those who failed to vote in 2 consecutive elections. The COMELEC, however, announced the suspension of voter registration and issuance of voter certification in certain areas which were put under a stricter community quarantine status. Several towns and cities in the province of Cebu will suspend voter activities in all offices of the election officer. Voter registration activities are also suspended in Vigan City, Ilocos Sur, which is under MECQ from August 9 to 23. Election officers in Tuguegarao City will temporarily stop accepting voter registrants and issuing voter certificates from August 12 to 21. Satellite registration in barangays, malls, other venues in the said areas are also suspended. The nationwide voter registration will end on September 30. Meanwhile, the COMELEC has moved the submission and opening of bids for the public auction of over 81,000 precinct count optical scan or PCOS machine to August 23. This is due to the ECQ in Metro Manila. The submission of bids will be at 9 a.m. on August 23 to be followed by the opening of the bids at 10 a.m. Over 81,000 PCOS machines are up for public auction in the amount of 187.5 million pesos or 2,293 pesos per unit. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Moahe.
The Regional Development Council in Eastern Visayas reports that some 29,000 housing units for victims of Super Typhoon Yolanda are already occupied. Over 11,000 are ready for occupancy out of the 64,000 plus target units. About 1,200 units still lack electricity and water supply. The RDC noted that after more than 7 years, challenges remain in the completion of the post-Yolanda housing projects. These include delays due to unfavorable weather conditions, lack of manpower and resources on site, and delayed issuances of permits and licenses, among many others. Meanwhile, the local Water Utilities Administration recorded a 96% completion on the Tacloban North Water Supply Project. The system is designed to bring a stable water supply to 21 resettlement sites. The National Electrification Administration also completed 57 electrification projects for the original Yolanda housing project. A former member of the New People's Army in Gabaldon, Nueva Ecija, surrendered to the military, claiming he has no more reason to fight the government. Fernando Moises Alvarado, a member of the Sandathang Unit Pampropaganda 3, voluntarily surrendered to the 91st Infantry Battalion of the Philippine Army on Tuesday. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Reandro Rubio said the former rebel was convinced by the sincerity of President Rodrigo Duterte's whole-of-nation approach in attaining peace. The surrenderer turned in a pistol without ammunition and serial number and a subversive document. These were brought to the Gabaldon Municipal Police Station for documentation and proper disposition. Ilagan City in Isabela Province will soon fabricate a hybrid electric road train, or HERT, and use this as an alternative mode of transportation. Department of Science and Technology Secretary Fortunato de la Peña said Ilagan City Mayor Jose Marie Diaz expressed interest to adapt the HERT developed by the DOST. The train will be used for transporting frontliners during lockdowns and while holding community outreach activities, among others. It could accommodate 220 passengers per coach. HERT is also powered by electric batteries to cut carbon emissions. The city also aims to enhance the skills of students through the fabrication of HERT. De la Peña said the DOST hopes to serve the best interest of the people in Ilagan City, particularly on its need for an environment-friendly mass transportation facility. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. All accounted for, the Health Department shrugs off corruption allegations following the Commission on Audit's findings of deficiencies in its handling of COVID-19 funds worth over 67 billion pesos. Jabs, jabs, and more jabs. The country gets 100,000 doses of Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United Arab Emirates. Some 800,000 government-procured Pfizer jabs also arrive and will be deployed to areas with high COVID-19 cases. A magnitude 7.1 earthquake jolts the province of Davao Oriental. No casualty or major damage has so far been reported from the tremor. And more areas halt voter registration activities after these were placed under a stricter quarantine status. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19.
Philippine News Agency joins the rest of the country in congratulating the Philippine delegation to the Tokyo Olympics for their remarkable feats in Philippine sports history. To weightlifter and Olympic gold medalist Heidelin Diaz, boxing silver medalist Nesty Petesio and Carlo Paalam, fellow boxer and bronze medalist Humir Marshall, and the rest of the Filipino team. You have brought honor to the country by showing that Filipinos can excel in any field. May you inspire more athletes and fellow Filipinos to walk their chosen paths and strive for excellence. Maraming salamat at mabuhay ang atletang Pilipino.
Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day. Stay safe, everyone.